We're going to call the meeting to order, please. If we would, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Copeland will lead the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can we have certification of closed meeting, please?
Resolution of certification of the closed meeting of April 2nd, 2015, pursuant to Section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended.
So move.
Board Member Bouchard?
Yes.
Board Member Brooks-Buck?
Yes.
Board Member Byram?
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick?
Yes.
Board Member Skeeter? Vice Chairman Copeland?
Aye.
Chairman Dobransky?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Let's go to reports by the superintendent.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. As you can see, the first item on our list is elementary summer school learning and enrichment for academic progress. I'm going to call to the podium Mrs. Pamela Connor to begin our presentation. Ms. Connor.
Good evening. I'd also like to invite Carol McCormick. Mrs. McCormick is the CEO for the United Way of Southampton Roads, and we've been in partnership this year, and we have some exciting news to share with you tonight. We're going to do this as a joint presentation. Here we go. The elementary summer school program is taking on a new look this summer, and we're excited to push out a community partnership. As I said, Mrs. McCormick and the United Way of Southampton Roads, known as the United for Children, has been working together to look at a new revised elementary summer school program, and we're calling it LEAP. LEAP stands for Learning and Enrichment for Academic Progress. Just a quick overview, the LEAP program will be a full-day elementary program housed at MacBin Jr. All 12 elementary schools will participate. It will be a 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock program. That's different from how we've done it before. We've had half-day programs. It will begin June 22nd and July 30th. We're selecting our kindergarten through 5th grade students and our rising kindergarten students who have had no preschool experience. If we have those students out there who have not registered for kindergarten, now is the time to do this, and we're going to invite you to participate in this program. The mornings are going to be an academic remediation program, and the afternoons will be an enrichment opportunity for students. We're inviting 510 students. With this new program, we're looking at a 1-to-9 ratio. We'll have a teacher and a paraprofessional in the morning in a 24-day program, academics from 9 to 1, and enrichment from 1 to 3. We will provide transportation, breakfast, lunch, and then there will be a snack in the afternoon. The kindergarten through 5th grade students will need, who will need additional academic support will be attending this program. We're looking at their MAP data and students with their SOL scores that perhaps would need a little more support. Again, like I said, we're looking at our rising kindergarten with no preschool experience. The staffing for this program, we're looking at 35 classroom teachers, 25 assistants, a program coordinator, a nurse, a clerk in the morning, and a media specialist. We've not had our libraries open in the past. This year we're going to open our media, our libraries. A custodian and, of course, transportation will be provided. In the afternoon, the students will then transition into an enrichment program with a variety of opportunities. There we're looking for enrichment facilitators, classroom teachers, program coordinator, and a nurse.
Thank you. Again, my name is Carol McCormick. I'm the United Way CEO, and I just am so thrilled to be here today. If you remember, several of us gathered in for a breakfast not too long ago, and at that point, this was aspirational. And so we're just really excited to come back and start giving you some real details about what's happening this summer. And I have to say, before I go any further, you have an amazing team here. And Dr. Whitney, I cannot tell you how easy you are to work with, how easy your team is to work with, what a great school system you have. And of course, we serve all of Southampton roads, and so we know personally every school district, and you have a lot to be proud of. A lot to be proud of. And so if you look at this, what's the differentiation between the two? One of the things that we wanted to share with you is that obviously there's a differentiation in cost. So the reason we call this United for Children, the reason we approached you with that, is the idea that all of us in this community ought to be gathering around the success of our children. And the kids that are chosen to go to summer school are those who need extra time with their teachers. And that's the bottom line of it. They need extra time and they need extra experiences for them to be successful. Not all children can be successful in a normal structure of school with the hours and the days that we have. And that's just the bottom line of it. We resource schools across this country for sort of middle-class kids and kids who are in the middle and upper echelons of being able to do their homework and being able to do their schoolwork. And so these other kids just need extra time, and we are thrilled, absolutely thrilled to be here to help you do that. So if you can see, in expanding the number of days and making it a full-day program and offering the enrichments and putting in the library time and all the other things that happen to that, there's a differentiation of $167,000. And when we met with you, we had maybe about $3,000. So we were, as I said, it was aspirational the day we spoke that morning. So go on to the next one. So what does this look like when we talk about targeted individual academic support? And I don't know if, well, I'll take this and go through it. You know, the biggest thing that we see, so I'm going to tell you as a non-educator, and sometimes I think it's good for non-educators to talk about educators. These kids get hands-on, minds-on learning. And by that, if you've ever been in a classroom where the kids get to gather around in a group and do projects, it's just the most magical thing. Because kids who don't typically do as well with the teacher lecturing them have the opportunity to actually get down and work with things and work with their hands. We've watched this in action, and it is, I can't tell you how wonderful it is, and I hope each and every one of you will come and look at your summer school, because it will make you very proud. Next one. The other piece of this is the health and wellness, the physical fitness, on-site and off-site field trips, fine arts. I mean, the ideal of this is that these children need more experiences. And we as a community need to gather around and give them those experiences. And I think this is the two last ones. Expected outcomes. If you look through this process of the outcomes, a lot of really good stuff. I won't mention every single one of them. And I don't know, Pam, is there one that you think is more important? Well, obviously the academics in the long run, but the reduced summer learning loss. If you look at these kids and look what happens to them in the summer, they actually regress 2 to 3 months. And so if we can keep them from regressing and actually get them to progress, they'll do so much better in their next academic year. And there's all kinds of research around that. Next one. So we need community volunteers. Now this is the next piece. We talked about aspirationally how we're going to put this together. Now the next piece of it is we've got it put together, and we'll tell you that in a moment and share you with those pieces of it. But there's a place in this group for lots of different organizations to come around our school system and be able to work with these kids, particularly in the afternoon enrichment programs. And so we've got a lot of things we've put together, but we're still looking for more. And I would encourage you to think about the types of groups you're involved in that may want to come and be a part of this program and take the kids on a field trip or bring in some type of special activity and work with those kids. Because now is your time to start signing up and being a part of that. Next. So, possible enrichment activities. Look at all these various things, and I think you've gotten quite a number of these covered. So this is why they wanted to put these different ones on here, but we're always looking for additional enrichment activities. We're not going to have too many things for these kids to do. One of the things I love about United for Children is you create the morning and the morning academics, and then the enrichments. You make sure that there are teachers there. You make sure the paraprofessionals are there, so that we know the children are safe and taken care of. And then you get to bring people in the community together, arts groups to come in, dance groups to come in, and be with those kids. It's a great opportunity. Next one. So, partners to date. We're missing one, and that was the one that I really want to do. If it's on your flyer, but it's not here. And so, as of this morning, hot off the press, in the United Way, during the United Way campaign, we had people designate to United for Children, and we haven't even started in Suffolk. I think it wasn't even a glimmer in our daddy's eye, as we used to say when we were kids. But look at the groups who have come forward to do that. Birdsong Foundation came forward with $20,000 to help us, and as of this morning, hot off the press, OBC Foundation gave us $109,000. That deserves. And so we are within $20,000 of fully funding that $167,000 that we talked about a few months ago. So it will happen. We are in great shape, and we are thrilled to be here. And I'm going to leave it back to you, Pam.
Okay.
Wrap it up.
All right. We have already put out our teacher applications. The summer morning program are certified teachers working in the remediation program. The afternoon is not limited to teachers. We've actually had some organizations, the Virginia Cooperative Extension 4-H program. All students will be 4-H club members. We're looking for clubs and organizations to help support and volunteer. We're reaching out to our high schools. This is a perfect opportunity for our high school students to get community service work, volunteer with our programs. If any organizations out there would like to participate, we have the proposals online, and they're available in schools if anyone would like to reach forward and be a part of our enrichment program. So this is new. It's actually combining what we have done in the past, where we had enrichment separate from remediation, and it gives the child an opportunity to stay in school, to be there from 9 to 3, and to be provided transportation home. So we look forward to it, and as Mrs. McCormick said, we hope that you will visit the program, participate if you would like, and we'll be glad to show you a tour at any time. Any questions about this new and improved elementary program?
Before we get questions, I would like to say a special thanks to Mrs. McCormick and, of course, to my staff. I think back to when Carol came to my office to talk about this. It definitely is aligned with our mission. It's aligned with our philosophy as far as educating young children here in Suffolk Public Schools. I think this is an excellent opportunity. I think we may find ourselves almost having to turn students away, because it's what teaching and learning is all about. So thank you for that.
And it is no charge to the parents or the students, is that correct?
No, sir, no charge at all.
Parents and students just get lined up for this program now.
That's right.
We are planning, as soon as we invite our parents, to have a parent meeting to share more about what we're doing in the program, so that they're a part of this process. Ms. McCormick, would you like to introduce any of your staff that are here this evening?
I certainly would. And I have actually a product of Suffolk Public Schools, am I correct? He was the precocious little boy that some of you may remember, but now his name is Win Winslow, and he is our relationship manager for you with United Way. So, Win, we're delighted to have you here, and he's put a lot of work into this.
And I'll close by thanking the United Way and everything they've done for us, because this is truly a community partnership. We meet every other Thursday. When we're on speakerphone with Sarah Bishop and the committee there, so we're growing. If anyone would like to contact us, please feel free to do so, and we'll be a part of the meetings that will occur throughout the next few months. All right, thank you.
It's without a doubt that your program will be a success if you got WIN a part of it. WIN is a product of the Suffolk City school system, and I'm proud to be able to identify with WIN, because he was something like a fifth grader when I was principal at Oakland.
He's committed. He has a passion, and we have him on speed dial, so that's another good thing. All right,
Thank you,
very
WIN,
much.
for the great job you're doing. Yeah.
And I'd like to say also, he was one of my former students, and I haven't forgotten him after all these years. Very nice young man.
Yeah.
And I do want to say, we really appreciate the OBC Foundation, Birdsong, and all these people in our community for coming forward. They're really showing us that they back educational opportunities in our city, and we truly appreciate that.
Thank you, Mrs. Bynum, for saying that. Also, let me remind you that the Early Childhood Development Commission has donated $19,000 who will be funding the Rising Kindergarten transition. They're funding the teachers, the paraprofessionals, and 3 facilitators for the afternoon program, as well as $1,500 for materials and supplies. They've made that commitment as well, so we appreciate their support.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
The next item on the list under the superintendent's report is an overview of our local benchmark assessments. I know as board members and parents, you've heard a lot about NWEA. Well, tonight, Mrs. Chavis, our deputy superintendent, will lead the discussion and overview of our progress with the NWEA, as well as our MAP data, and in addition to our benchmark data. Ms. Chavis.
Good evening. In addition to the data that the superintendent just mentioned, we'll also be sharing with you strategies and that we have been employing to continue to work with our students and build performance. We'll also have, as part of the benchmark presentation in English and math, we have for you sample released items from the state. Often we get questions as to what the questions look like. And so tonight you'll have an opportunity to see those, as well as questions from our benchmark assessments. The data that you'll see this evening will be the results of the benchmark and NWEA data from the winter administration. We're currently in the process of administering the spring administration of both sets of data, and that will continue through the end of April. And so again, you'll see in the winter administration of NWEA as well as benchmark. The NWEA data will be in English and math only. You've heard us talk about MAP. We've continued to throw those acronyms, NWEA. NWEA is the company, Northwest Evaluation Association. MAP is the actual assessment that we administer 3 times a year to our students. And MAP stands for Measures of Academic Progress. This test is different, this assessment is different in that it is adaptive, and that as the students progress through the questions, the level of difficulty increases. Once the student gets to a point where they begin missing those more difficult questions, it then adapts and adjusts back to the next level, lower level question, until it gets to that instructional level of the student. And that is actually a type of question that would be this year, assessment for the math 6th grade SOL test would be in that same format this year. Again, the students are tested in the fall, winter, and spring in grades K through 8. In high school, we use the previous spring data as the benchmark data for the fall. They take a winter administration and then a spring administration that will occur in April. In the later presentation, you see information about a RIT score. That's a scale that's used to measure growth of our students. And this information is given to teachers in several different types of reports so they can actually monitor growth of the students. That information can be used for planning purposes, grouping students. You'll see where a report will be given where they can reinforce skills that students still need development in, skills also that they're ready to be instructed on, as well as skills and concepts that they're ready to be introduced to. Here's a sample report, a student progress report. I just want to call your attention to, this is something that parents would see as well as teachers and the students. The blue bar represents the score of the student. The middle bar, and again, these are scores or assessments from the fall of 2013 of a student on through the winter of 2015, one of our students in John Yates Middle School. And so you're able to see from the fall of 2013 on through the winter of 2015 the growth of that student. Again, the blue bar represents the score the student made. The next bar will represent the district score, and then the score after that is a norm score of other students in a cohort across the country who took the same or similar assessment. And so again, the chart to the right represents that same data, just in a different format. So you see in 2013 in the fall, the students scored a 241. Again, in the winter, to measure growth, they were up to a 237. For the fall of the next school year, a 241, a 236 for the next school year, and then a 225. This is given in both math and reading for teachers to take a look, and is sent home with students to their parents. Again, the MAP test is different from the benchmark assessment in that the MAP test measures growth. The benchmark tests are really a gauge for that period in time to see what has been taught and whether or not the students passed or mastered that information. And you'll get information shortly as to the results of the benchmark assessments. Here are the results of the fall and winter administration. Again, we're comparing here the results from a fall administration to the winter. The fall is in blue, the winter is in red, and then the normative group across the country is in green. Here you see this is a district report. It's kindergarten through 5th grade in math, and you can see growth from kindergarten through 5th grade from the fall administration to the winter. While we lag slightly, 1 to 2 points behind the norm across the country, however, we still show growth in each of those grade levels. And that's important because whether or not we meet the benchmark, we do want to know whether or not the students have grown over time, and MAP gives us that information. Here's the same as it relates to math. This is middle school, however, and you can see that there was growth from the fall to the winter, however, slightly lagging behind the cohort as it relates to the winter assessment. In high school, there is no fall administration of the MAP assessment. We use the spring data from the year before, and the students in the Algebra 1 labs and the geometry labs are those that are administered this assessment. These are the students who have historically, in middle school, perhaps not performed as well in the area of math, and so we give them a double block of algebra and geometry, and we then administer the assessment to check their growth over time. In reading, here are the results from the fall to the winter. We're getting ready now, actually, as I mentioned before, we'll be taking the spring administration. You can see growth from fall to winter, how K through 1 actually scored equal to the norm group, while grades 2 through 5 were above the norm. Reading middle school, 2 to 3 points slightly below. However, the most growth we saw was in 8th grade, as you can see, still lagging slightly behind the norm. And then high school reading from the winter administration in comparison to the norm group, and we're slightly behind the norm in 10th grade by 1 point, and then there's much growth to happen at 9th grade. Again, this information gives us a really good picture as to how our students are doing. If you look at the very back of your packet, there is a gold sheet that says the card to continuum of learning. It's a sample report. That report is given to teachers. They can print that out in addition to other reports, and it really shows the areas that students may be performing low in, also where they're ready for instruction, and then comparison to areas that they may be ready to be introduced to something more. And so when you look at this report, you'll be able to see in numbers 1 and 2 highlights the area. This is algebra. You'll then see those 3 separate parts of the chart. It gives where they are ready to, skills that need to be enhanced on the left, those where students are currently working in the middle, and then the far right would be skills that they're ready to be introduced to. Again, that's the goal sheet that's in your packet. And so teachers can use this information to set goals, to plan, to tier their students, and to break them up into groups for both reading and for math. Ms. Mondale, the supervisor of math, will now share the benchmarks for benchmark results for math, and Mrs. McGrath will share those for English. You have several samples questions in your packet. All of those will not be introduced tonight. That's just additional information for you. Ms. Mondale?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm going to speak about the benchmarks from elementary, middle, and high school. Before I do that, I would like to give you a little brief history of some changes that we've made from year to year as far as especially the elementary and math benchmarks. As you can see, we have the second benchmark up there. We give a first benchmark, second benchmark, and third benchmark representing around 7.5-week period. The reason we chose 7.5 weeks versus the end of the 9 weeks is because in the past we have given midpoint at 4.5 weeks, and the end of the 9 weeks. Teachers have expressed, in the past couple of years, they expressed that they felt like they wanted less testing so they can have more teaching. So as an initiative, and a call to that. Dr. Whitney responded with, okay, let's restructure how we're giving and the number of times that we're giving benchmark tests. We didn't want to wait till the end of the 9 weeks, so we made it at 7.5 weeks. So you'll see that for elementary and for middle school. As you can see, our second benchmark was given several weeks ago, about 7.5 weeks ago, and you can see the 3 scores, grade 3, grade 4, and grade 5. I will say that though we do not have the data up there, we just recently gave our third benchmark. Our third benchmark actually has tested new skills in third 9 weeks. In addition, we have brought back skills from the second 9 weeks and some from the first 9 weeks. And our scores, even though they're not up there, I recently checked today because the testing window ended yesterday, and our scores are at 79% for grade 3, 68 grade 4, and right at 81 for grade 5. So we're making that progress that we're expecting to see. For middle school math, our second benchmark, 73 for grade 6, 59 for grade 7, and grade 8 is 79. I do want to point out one thing about grade 7. With grade 6, we have all of our grade 6 students testing that benchmark. For grade 7, it's very important to understand that with grade 7, that is where we start branching off to other benchmarks, to other grade levels. For example, some of our 7th graders are actually taking grade 8 tests. So what we have in grade 7 are the students that are in grade 7 that are not considered honors or advanced students. They will be in the grade 8 data. Also, those grade 7 students in a couple of years, they're the ones who are the first year 9th graders in Algebra 1. And then grade 8, 79%. I wish I had some information to share about our third benchmark. Due to the weather, we've extended the window, so testing has not been completed. We did pull out the grade 7 math standards of learning strands because we wanted to give you an idea of what SOLs are being taught throughout the year in grade 7. I've highlighted 2 of the strands that tend to be the lower performing strands, number sense and transformations. And as Ms. Chavis mentioned earlier, we also wanted to pull out a particular, one of the samples of questions that we've asked. If you take a look, that 52% represents question 7 on one of our local benchmarks. Question 7 scored 52%. What that means is 52% of the students got it correct. And on the right is how we have written it for our local benchmark. On the left is the state SOL released item. We try to align as much as we can with the state released item, but not just the state released item, but we also look at our curriculum frameworks, and we also look at the table of specifications, which is a table that will indicate the rigor of the question, the type of question, how it's going to be assessed. For the curriculum frameworks, the students are expected to be able to order fractions, decimals, and percents from least to greatest, but also from greatest to least. Therefore, when you see our questions, they may not be verbatim as the state released, but they are aligned to the curriculum frameworks. For example, the released item in this particular case on one of the released tests was least to greatest, while on ours it was greatest to least. On other SOL released tests, we have also seen it be greatest to least. They're expected to know both ways. Here are math high school benchmark performance. Again, we don't have the third 9 weeks or the third benchmark because, again, we've extended it to April the 20th. Algebra 1 is 44%, Geometry and honors algebra, we separate those because we have an honors geometry class and a geometry class. Their exams are similar, but they are different because we also look at what is the curriculum that we are using for the honors geometry class, as well as the honors algebra 2, which includes trig, whereas the regular honors 2 does not. And I've taken, pulled out the strands for each of the Algebra 1 geometry and Algebra 2, which I'll show you in just a second. For the Algebra 1, the two strands that tend to be lower performing strands is inequalities and graphing linear equations and inequalities. Here is an Algebra 1 question, example of a question from inequalities. 47% of the students correctly answered question 12, which dealt with actually step by step knowing how to solve an inequality, and not only knowing how to solve it, but being able to justify each step with a property that they've had to learn. On the left shows the released item, on the right our local benchmark. So again, not verbatim, because as you can see on the left, they're asking what is the justification between step 3 and step 4, whereas one on our right says step 1 and step 2. But again, they are expected to be able to identify each step and justify each step. Geometry strands. Two of our lower performing is proven triangles congruent and right triangles. The released item. A couple of years ago with the new standards, they also brought something on called technology enhanced items. And these, they have different kinds. They have drag and drop. They have something called hotspots, which Ms. McGrath actually has an example of that one. They have free response, they have fill in the blank, so they have a variety where the student not just chooses from 4 choices like in the past, but now they actually have to show a process, show their thinking and reasoning skills. In this particular one with, in the area of G6, proven triangles congruent, on the left, the state requires students to be able to solve, to be able to prove that triangles are congruent and prove that they are similar through a two-column proof. On the left, as you can see, there's on the right-hand side, there's a list of reasons. And what the student would have to do is actually select the reason, drag it over to the box, and drop it into the box. Now, with a TEI question, it's an all or nothing. They have to get every piece of that correct in order for them to receive credit. On our right, as you can see, we have the same thing. They will have to choose from the columns to plug in the reasons. On the left, you might say, well, there's only 2 steps for state, and we have several more. But keep in mind, this is alignment. This is not verbatim, so to speak. With proving, a proof can be either from 2 or 3 steps. It can be up to 5 or 6 steps. On past release tests, we have seen items where they've had to prove, and there's been up to 4 to 5 to 6 steps. And with the Algebra 2 strands, the 2 lower performing strands have been this year A21, which deals with radical and polynomial expressions, and A24, which deals with solving equations. Here is an example question. The division-wide, the district-wide question number 13 scored 19%. And then there's an example of the state question as well. In this, just the multiple choice, and which they actually had to describe the roots of the equations. I will tell you that I've already asked about why this might be one of the lowest performing question types, And what I am told is that they've been having trouble with describing the roots. They're solving the roots of the equation, but when it comes to actually describing it, the teachers have not spent perhaps enough time on that. So we have already started having the teachers put those types of questions on their warm-up problems, their bell ringers that they present. So they're already getting a handle on that and giving the students more practice and explanation for those as well. As you know, unless we're at 100%, there's always room for improvement. We have put together our strategies for improvement this year. I am going to show you professional development, some strategies we've been using this year for professional development, instructional support that we've given our teachers so far this year, in addition to some of the resources that we have been providing our teachers. With professional development, the state is now requiring us to work with the written, taught, tested curriculum alignment. Basically, we have been providing professional development for our teachers in the planning, the teaching, and the assessing of their standards. We have begun the school year with writing objectives. Those schools who have seen through the lesson plans that teachers still need additional support, we've been going out to the schools and giving them that additional support on writing objectives. Creating formative and summative assessments, we have done that as a grade on our citywide, at our citywide meetings, but in addition, upon request, we are going out to schools and working with specific schools as well. Creating technology-enhanced look-alike questions for the teachers to be able to use those in their classrooms to practice with the students before actually having the students work the problems on their benchmarks. We've talked a lot about this, unpacking the standards and how important that is. We've given them. Also, we've done guided math. We continue to work with guided math and showing elementary teachers and middle school teachers how to use guided math in their classrooms. Using item analysis to guide instruction. As I mentioned before, with our SOLs, with our benchmarks, the third benchmark may have second 9 weeks information on it, SOLs being reassessed, as well as first. We want to pull down that, dig deeper in our data, pull down those objectives that were reassessed. How are we progressing with those objectives? And using NWEA results to drive instruction. Keep in mind, this is collaborative efforts. When I talk about we, I just don't mean we as an SAO team, but I also mean using our teachers, our experts in the field. For example, using NWEA results to drive instruction. We noted that there was a particular teacher and a special ed inclusion teacher who were doing a wonderful job using NWEA results to drive their instruction. So we asked them if they would come and present at our citywide to share that with the rest of the middle school teachers in this particular case. And we've sent teachers to state conferences. We've had SOL Math Institutes that we've sent a few teachers to. And we were very fortunate for the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics Conference to come to Richmond. And we were able to send 18 of our middle and high school teachers, both special ed and general ed, to that conference. And when they came back, they reported out at our citywide meetings to share that with all the teachers in the system. Instructional support that we've given, we attend grade level meetings and provide assistance during the grade level meetings. We co-plan and co-teach with teachers. We're into the classrooms as much as we can be, modeling lessons. We're assisting with the development and the review of common assessments. Some schools actually are sending us their common assessments, asking us to review them and give them feedback. Reviewing lesson plans And we're also working with doing joint observations with the principals and assistant principals of schools so we can provide better feedback to teachers. And resources provided. Every year, we send out a curriculum guide at the beginning of the year. This includes such things as the pacing chart, the testing blueprint frameworks, instructional initiatives, parent resource guide. We send out to schools release tests so they could use them for practice. VDOE sends a performance analysis to us. We encourage teachers to use those and analyze that. Common assessments, content review notes, study guides. This year, teachers have requested things like, well, can you provide us some daily reviews? And we've done that. And as I referenced earlier, we also we've also been making TEI practice problems, technology enhanced practice problems. If there are no questions, Ms. McGrath will continue with reading.
I have one.
Okay, yes, sir.
Would you go back to the chart that showed 41% of algebra and 43% of algebra 2 students not making that?
Okay, 44% algebra 1?
That's it, yes. Can you tell us what the makeup of that?
Yes,
two?
I will. For algebra 1, that is actually the middle school and high school algebra classes, algebra 1 classes. There are approximately among the 4 algebra 1 classes in middle school, the 4 schools in middle school make up approximately 500 students, and the 3 high schools, algebra 1, that is approximately 600. Actually, if you add Turlington Woods, it brings it to 624 students.
These are not any of the advanced students. These are students that are taking the
These
class.
are, right, these are students, as I refer to the 7th grade, 2 years ago, these were those 7th grade students. The algebra, the geometry students are actually the algebra 1 students from 8th grade. So this algebra 1 are those struggling 7th graders who in 2 years become that first time algebra 1 students.
Okay, do we have the majority of our supervisors in concentration with those schools that need it the most?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, we have been going into the middle schools and predominantly the high schools for the Algebra 1. She is going in, and it's actually Jill Paraska, she is actually going into a weekly grade level meetings and conducting some of those, facilitating some of those meetings. She has provided numerous resources for the teachers to assist them. She actually goes in and models lessons for those teachers who are especially struggling. Our challenge this year, unfortunately, is we have a big turnover and we have a lot of new teachers teaching Algebra 1 in 2 of our 3 high schools. So, but we are pushing in as much support as we possibly can for Algebra 1 geometry and Algebra 2, especially to those particular 2 high schools.
Okay.
Dr. Dobransky, may I ask a
Sure, absolutely.
There's such a stark contrast between the honors program, the honors students, and the students who are in, I guess, the regular classes.
Yes, ma'am.
What's the selection process for going to honors? And are we skimming our top performers off and putting them in a separate place? And then we have others left? Or tell me how we do that.
I do know that in our, there you are. I do know that we do have a screening process. One of it is they had to score a certain pass rate on their Algebra 1 test. I do know that. To be totally honest, I can't tell you at this point what that score is. And we also have teacher recommendation as one of the Algebra 1. We do have it spelled out in our parent resource guide, and I can get you that unless you know, Ms. Chavis.
We could provide that But as Ms. Mondale said, it comes from teacher recommendations, those who they believe, and based on their SOL scores, and looking at NWEA, those that will do well in an honors class. They will also be those students who will perform well in an advanced placement class.
So they're usually a combination of our top-performing students who are in those classes.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. And I will tell you that most of the students in honors geometry are ninth graders, and they are the students who came from Algebra 1 who scored high on their Algebra 1 SOL as an eighth grader.
So they
Most
would have
all
been-
of our honors geometry students are ninth graders.
So they would have been our pre-algebra students in 7th grade,
Yes,
algebra in
ma'am.
8th grade, and then honors in 9th grade.
Absolutely.
Are we doing anything about class size for these other students, reducing the class size hopefully, or providing aid for them, the ones that are not in the honors programs in the middle school? And
That is based on what principles? That's a school
Yes. That's the
level
decision
decision.
of the principal. That's the other reason why I showed you before the algebra lab and the geometry lab is to keep those classes small. But again, it's relying upon the principal scheduling as well as the number of students that need to go into those classes. But that's done at the school level.
perhaps we need to hire some more math teachers for next year.
If we can find them, so that has always been, for the last couple of years, a very difficult task in finding and keeping math teachers. But we do have some long-term subs in some situations. We've had that this year also.
Good.
I wanted to ask a question about that. Is it possible within our budget that, I mean, I know that struggling math students can come to after-school tutoring, but what if our existing teachers could, say, take on a sixth class or a sixth, what do you call it? A seventh discipline or what?
Seventh bell.
A seventh bell. Well, no, actually, I mean, teachers are paid to teach X number of classes.
Right.
And if they took on another class, it means that they would be paid extra for doing that. And I think that some of the problems that we're having are that kids can't or are not willing to come to after-school tutoring, so that if a teacher were willing to give up his or her planning period and were paid more to teach that extra class, it could actually be a tutoring class. And it being realistic, everything that we can do within the school day would be beneficial, because so many students don't make it to the after-school tutoring, and the teachers do have that planning that they may be willing to give up for extra money. I don't know if that's possible, but it just seems reasonable.
We also have remediation funds that are provided to the schools, and it's being done, just looks differently in each of the high schools. For instance, here at Kings Fork, Dr. Bird has made a special effort to even transform his study halls so that students who need particular reinforcement, he has teachers who are set up to then provide that support to students. So it looks differently in each building, but there is also in-school remediation in each of those three cases, our three high schools. In some cases, like Nansemond River, because they already have teachers teaching extended bells because of the numbers of students enrolled in that building, he has also had to do something differently as far as providing support during the school day. We have tutors who come in, again, finding qualified math people to go in and support has really been a challenge.
One of the things, I'm sorry, that we have done this year, it hasn't taken off as largely as I would have hoped, is hiring part-time teachers where they can work part of the day, and these are usually our retired teachers, or it could be retired teachers from other divisions. They will do either a remediation block or a half-a-day type of thing, but it does look different at each of our schools.
Let me ask you this. With the scores, say, for Algebra 1, you talked about the numbers of students who are in middle school taking it. Now, are we seeing any trends there with regard to where our lowest scores are coming from? In essence, are they coming from our 8th grade Algebra 1 students, or are they a combination of, they're coming from our high school students? I see.
The majority are coming from our high school students. We may have small pockets of those students in 8th grade who's low performing, but the majority are coming from those students that are taking Algebra 1 as a ninth grader for the first time.
Questions? Mrs.
Thank you.
McGrath will now come forward with the results from the English benchmarks.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm going to share with you the same format that Ms. Mondell shared, the elementary, middle, and high school benchmark performance on the most recent tests that they've taken. I'll also share some test items that were lower performing and some strategies that we've put into place to address those needs. All right, here you'll see the elementary reading benchmark performance for grades 3 through 5. This is the first time the third graders have taken an online benchmark test. All grade levels met or exceeded the pass rate of 60%. Once the benchmark is given, we do analyze that data to find any areas of weakness that we need to address. And I'll show you here. I pulled out third grade. There are two, here are the strengths for third grade reading SOLs. 3.4 and 3.6 showed lower performing question items, vocabulary and comprehension of nonfiction text. From there, I pulled out individual questions that showed lower performance and how it was assessed. Here you'll see, as you saw with math, some sample items. On the left, you see a state-released TEI, or technology-enhanced item. Our item on the right is the actual item that was on the benchmark assessment, question number 37. The students for this item, it's called a hotspot. They have to identify which words on the right would appear on the same page as those guide words that are listed, that are shown there on the left of each question. Students do have to get every answer correct to get credit. For this particular question, 23% of the students picked the correct answers. Here's our middle school English test performance for the second 9 weeks. The middle school pacing guides have been restructured for this school year, and we are making the transition from teaching a particular genre in 9 weeks to all genre in 9 weeks, and using that as a vehicle to teach the SOLs. We've also transitioned our assessments in the same way, so students will see a variety of genre on the assessments and have to apply those skills to each of those. Again, after the benchmark is administered, we analyze that data to identify any areas of weakness. I've pulled out the 7th grade strands, and 7.4 and 7.6 were areas that showed lower performing questions. From there, I pulled out some questions that were on our benchmark assessment and a released item from the state. This particular question addresses 7.6i, which is nonfiction, or more specifically, summarizing text. What the students have to do for this is again called a hotspot. On the left, the students are asked to identify the notes that don't belong. And again, there may be more than one. The state does say that sometimes they will tell the students that they have to pick one, and some, or two or three, and sometimes they won't. So they just have to know how many answers there are. And again, they have to get it all correct to get credit. These are the 8th grade SOL strands. There are two, 8.7 and 8.8. 8.7 showed a lower performing. Again, we analyzed this data to find which questions the students had problems with on the benchmark test. I've matched that up against the SOL release. Again, this is another technology-enhanced item. This is the second kind that reading students will see. This is called a drag and drop. They will see two types on the reading assessment, either a drag and drop or the one I showed you earlier, which is a hot spot. The drag and drop is where they have to take the click and drag on the right anything that belongs in those boxes. This particular SOL is 8.7b, which is organizing their ideas. So they have to go back to the passage, organize the information, and then come back and figure out where they go in those boxes. Our item is on the right, and it's similar to what they have to do or what was released by the state.
For this particular item, 56% of the students got this correct.
Ms. McGrath, can you read what the direction is for our
Because
sample?
we can't see it.
Sure. Read the direction. Click and drag the answers to the correct box. They have to complete the chart. And on ours, it says complete the chart with the information on the right by writing in the correct letter.
Now, it's click and drag. Is that the technology that is used for the state SOLs, correct?
That is the technology used for the state.
Are our students taught the technology part of it?
They are. Teachers have websites that are pushed out by the VDOE, and we share those websites with them where students can actually practice these particular types of items.
So they're not only having to know the correct answer, they're going to have to learn how to justify that answer by moving it from one space to another, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Would it be fair to say that most of the information that is being taught is not what is being taught, but how it's being taught and how it's being presented to the students in the levels that are more likely to be on the knowledge or recall level rather than the application and evaluation levels?
I would agree with that, and I think the best example was the grade 7 reading passage, where it's a matter of not just identifying one statement, but you have to look through all of them. And you have to say which one doesn't belong or which of these do belong. So it's important that if we know it's going to be assessed that way, we have to make certain that we're teaching that way also.
That would be my question. Are we making sure we're teaching that way now in this day and time? Are the teachers aware of the levels of understanding?
Yes, we've spent a lot of time on providing professional development, on unpacking the standards, identifying the level that the SOLs need to be taught, providing them with resources, modeling lessons. Once we've identified those areas of weakness, we go into those schools and meet with grade levels and help them actually develop formative assessments or summative assessments and lessons and pacing guides. One thing that we did was developed specific pacing guides. They get a pacing guide which gives them for the 9 weeks what to teach, but breaking it down for them by 9 weeks, what to teach each 9 weeks, and also pulling in any SOLs that were an area of concern for the first and the second 9 weeks, so that they're going back and reteaching those skills and reassessing them to ensure that the students have mastered them.
May I ask, have we looked at the format of the question? For instance, not just dropping it and dragging it, but you were talking about one question where maybe 23% of the students, it's a negative question, so it's not what is the answer, but what things are not the answer.
Yes, ma'am.
Have we done any kind of analysis to see if those negative questions are ones that our children don't, because a lot of children don't do well with those? Have we done that? And if so, also looking at multiple responses that are necessary. I think you mentioned that earlier. There's more than one answer.
Yes. We have, and typically the not questions over the past 20 years since SOLs have come out, any of those not questions are typically ones that do perform low because the students do have difficulty with it. So we do encourage teachers to make sure that within their daily lesson plans or daily reviews that they do include and there's key words. There are certain that we give them that the VDOE uses. Several of us have served on content review committees and are able to bring that information back and tell teachers, like accept, least, most likely, not. All of those are shared with teachers and samples as well.
Ms. McGrath, you and Ms. Mondale used the term unpacking the SOLs. Can you briefly kind of explain what that means?
Sure. 2010, the SOLs were new and revised for English. So what we do with those is take each bullet, or when I showed you earlier, for example, this. Let me show you the 7th grade. These are the strands, but under each strand you have multiple numbers multiple letters. So for 7.4, you'll have a 7.4 A, B, C, D.
And then under those, there are bullets to the right in the curriculum framework that's released by the state. We have taken those and shown teachers how to understand what exactly the students need to know by looking at the verbs, looking at Bloom's taxonomy, and saying, all right, if it says that they need to analyze, and that needs to be how we're teaching it. So we unpacked all of those SOLs with and for the teachers, and it is in their pacing guide, and it identifies those verbs and says, for this particular SOL, it needs to be taught to the analysis level, and here are some sample stems that's also in their pacing guides that were developed this year. Here are some sample stems, here's how it's going to be asked, here are some questions that you need to make sure that you're incorporating in your teaching, and here are some resources to help you get there.
Because I think that's the key. Many kids perhaps don't understand the process, and if they understand what is actually being asked of them, then they perhaps would get the correct answer.
Yes, sir.
So I think that's key, that you teach that so that it will not be new to them on test day.
Correct. And we are transitioning to teaching just literature. We used to teach literature and pick a book and teach that book. And by the end of the lesson or the end of the unit, we had told the students everything. We told them what the theme was. We told them what the main idea was. We told them who the main characters were. We told them the problem, the solution. And now they have to be able to apply that information. So if we've told them and then we're giving them a cold piece of literature and asking them to analyze it, we're not helping them analyze that literature. We actually have to teach them to analyze literature.
Can I ask a question?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't mean to belabor this, but Dr. Whitney, this was very important what you asked her. Most of us are not going any longer to these conventions, and so those buzzwords that you all use, like unpack, I know this is the second time I've asked this, but does unpack mean you have all this stuff in the suitcase and you have 5 items and you take those items out and separate them? When you all present these things, I wish you wouldn't use those terms that I don't understand anymore. When I was teaching, I understood them because we use those buzzwords. But is it analyze? Is it list? Is it what? Does that really mean unpack?
Basically what it means is if you look at 7.4, and if you gave that to a teacher and said, I need you to teach word and phrase meanings, what are they going to teach? Okay. So if you unpack it, if you take out of your suitcase, all right, so with 7.4, you're going to have analogies. All right, now, how am I going to teach analogies? And then you unpack it even further and you say, all right, for analogies, I need students to be able to analyze analogies or make comparisons with, does that make sense?
Yeah, so you're even having trouble.
Well, I think another example is you look at 7.8, it says edit writing. Back when I was teaching edit writing, I can choose what I wanted to use to edit writing. The SOLs spell it out specifically. 7.8 has A, B, and C. When you're editing writing, you may be looking for making sure you're using proper punctuation, making sure that you're using and not using comma splices. So the teacher has to become very familiar with that SOL by unpacking it, as opposed to just looking at that strand and assuming what edit writing means.
Okay, so unpack really means be specific, enumerate.
Drill down.
I think drilling down, analyzing that SOL, yes.
And it goes as far, at least in my thinking, it goes as far as showing people what the indicators are, that something is understood, that you're doing the right thing. So if I see that they are looking at, they're rereading their work to see if they have punctuation in the right place, and rereading their work to see that the paragraphs are organized in the right way, and so on and so forth. So what it appears that they're doing as they look at this is following a very tightly coupled kind of policy with with lockstep almost things that you're supposed to do, but you break it down to the point that there are indicators there that a principal or a supervisor or whatever can look for when they come into the classroom to see what people are doing.
I guess my biggest concern is to get this from the central office into the teaching core. And that's my biggest concern, especially when I observed a teacher in Chesapeake today in a high school, and every question she asked was a knowledge or regurgitation question. No comparison or contrast, no whys. And I think that's the key. I think we need to get to our teachers, principals, and make sure they know how to ask the question, how to pose it, and where to pose it properly.
And I think what comes in there is what are the expectations for the lesson plan. As much as I expect our principals to be in classrooms, I know they're not going to be in every classroom every day. So they can at least periodically collect a lesson plan and see if that lesson plan includes the specifics to say, I see that you have Bloom's taxonomy here. I also see that you're using the curriculum framework. I see you're using the indicators from unpacking the SOLs as well. At least I see that that plan is there. Now I have to make certain that when I do visit, that you're using that plan. Because we all know teachers can write beautiful plans, but they may not implement them. On the same note, I may write sketchy plans and might be implementing or teaching it very well. So it goes hand in hand when we see that. And we have some very good teachers that are writing wonderful lesson plans, but one of the tasks this year was to say these are the items that we must have in lesson plans. The reason they must be in lesson plans is because I need evidence that it's taken place, or at least something that I can hopefully say that it's taken place. It's not true evidence until I see it.
Sorry, Ms. Smith-Graf, you can go ahead on. We were
okay.
highly interested in some of the things you talked.
That's a good point. One of the strategies I'll share later is that we do review lesson plans, and as an extension of that, we provide feedback to the teacher and then follow up, go in and observe the teacher and help them and provide them support as far as, all right, what can we do to improve this lesson or to improve instruction? And if we need to, we'll model or give them additional resources to help them to make sure that we're at the cognitive level that we need to be at.
Okay, thank you.
You would proceed to the strategies unique to English. I think it's the page that says strategies, improvement, instructional support, continue. The other ones were pretty much the same that we do for math, if you would. Okay.
This one?
Yes.
Okay. As you heard earlier, several of the strategies do cross over, and they are the same for reading as they are for math. I'll just touch on a few that are different. For example, balanced literacy. We've provided professional development on the components of balanced literacy. We've created a balanced literacy team to which we meet monthly. We've assessed what the needs are of the teachers and then developed together with administrators, Title I teachers, academic coaches, ongoing professional development. Also, state conferences, as Ms. Mondell talked about earlier, we've sent to SOL English Institute and the State Reading Conference. Teachers then come back and present at grade level meetings, citywide meetings for us after they've returned. Instructional support.
Let it finish.
One of the things that's unique to the English team is writing. We have writing teams that go into the buildings and assist with checking writings of every teacher to ensure that we're on the right track. Any teacher that needs support, that information is shared with the administrator and then come up with a plan on what professional development to provide to those teachers to help them grow their students. We return the second 9 weeks for those teachers that do need additional support to follow up. Additional resources that English may provide, I talked about earlier, the weekly pacing calendars, TEI practice questions, reading passages to help teachers use for writing formative and summative assessments, and also TEI questions.
Ms. Bouchard had a question.
I'm sorry, but what is balanced literacy?
Balanced literacy is the umbrella to which the components, they're the components for reading and what teachers form their reading program. It's our reading program. So it includes read aloud, shared reading, independent reading, guided reading, and then also the writing component.
All of those things are balanced literacy?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we do phonics and both the other
Yes, we have
hearsay or something like that?
a program called Foundations, to which all tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 students receive additional instruction, which is a lot of the phonics and word study.
Thank you.
Ask a question, please?
Sure, go right ahead.
Okay. I want to say both the math, Mrs. Mondale and Ms. McGrath, you all have explained this very well, and I know that
Thank you.
you know it, as we were speaking, do our classroom teachers know? But I was wondering, do we have a lot of substitution going on, substitute teachers in the two areas of the disciplines you all work with?
Yeah.
You know, are there a lot of substitutes coming in? Because if I was an instructor and you had taken me through that as a teacher, I would know all of this. But when you have substitutes coming in, they're not aware of this, which could throw 3 days of a substitute, could throw, you know, a lot.
That's a really good, I'm sorry. That's a really good point, and that's one of the reasons I'm going to go back to lesson plans, because if that teacher happens to be out a day or two, obviously she's expected to still leave detailed lesson plans. I know Human Resources has recently begun to, I think they've done this for years, provide a one-day workshop for substitutes where I think they touch SOLs a bit. They talk about SOLs that lead teachers in the past have come in to try to help them as well. Obviously, one of the things that we ask principals to do is to let us know, or let the system know, which substitutes you prefer. And obviously, you're going to prefer the ones that have an instructional background and are able to keep up so that it isn't a day that's missed or a wasted day, for lack of a better term.
Right.
And I know that I've been contacted several times, or if I know there's going to be a long-term substitute in a building, I'll contact the principal and ask them if they want me to come and help them develop a plan to assist that teacher, ensure that they're getting the instruction that they need.
Great, that's super.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The last, I believe it's the last item on the superintendent's report, is the calendar of special events. There are a few things that I'd like to share with you. Of course, spring break next week, April 6th through the 10th. We do have our Stars Talented Elementary Music Concert on Thursday, April 23rd. Superintendent's Art Show at the School Administrative Building will be on April 28th. Teacher of the Year Banquet, where we recognize all those Teachers of the Year for each of our schools, April 30th. Rookie Teacher of the Year reception is Tuesday, April 21st. Partners in Education Recognition Luncheon, May 5th. And you can see the other items. So obviously, for the rest of the year, we'll be eating lots of chicken. But these are the important dates that are coming up.
Dr. Whitney, would it be, should I go ahead and let the cat out of the bag about the test writing items or not?
Sure.
Dr. Whitney had given me some information a while back, and I didn't think it was proper to say it until now, but we're no longer going to count on you and the teachers to write the test items, if I'm correct.
That is correct. I can elaborate on that. I was a little puzzled with what you were referring to.
I was going with that, right?
Yes. We are in the process. In fact, our instructional team is well aware of it because they're part of the decision makers when it comes to instruction. We're in the process of looking at a program that will that we can use for the benchmark assessments. They have quality test items so that our teachers, our instructional team will not have to develop to the degree that they are now writing the test, because that takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time, and when it takes time, it means that they can't be in classrooms, they can't be helping substitutes, they can't be that guy on the side with the classroom teacher. So I do feel like this is a well-developed company, and the vendor will serve us well to have these questions put into our program, in addition to some teacher-made questions, to serve as our benchmark. And we hope that will be able to start in the fall.
That was a mighty definite sure.